If you've ever noticed that you actually enjoy staying at home, not just occasionally, but consistently, that you feel more at ease in your own space than out in the world, that while others get restless or bored, you feel calm, settled, maybe even relieved. It might seem like a simple preference, but it often says more about you than you think. Because for some people, staying at home isn't just comfort, it's a psychological pattern. On the surface, it looks like introversion, a preference for quiet, for familiarity, for slower environments. And sometimes that's exactly what it is. Home feels predictable, controlled, safe in a way the outside world isn't. There's no pressure to perform, no need to read people constantly, no unexpected situations to navigate. Everything is known. And that predictability creates a kind of mental ease that's hard to find anywhere else. But when you look a little closer, it's not always just about liking peace and quiet, because people don't attach to environments this strongly without a reason. You might notice small behaviors that come with it, like canceling plans not out of laziness, but out of quiet relief, or feeling a subtle tension when you have to go out, even if nothing is wrong. Or preferring your own company, not because others aren't enjoyable, but because being alone feels easier. And ease matters more than people realize, because ease often means safety. For some, home becomes a place where nothing is being demanded from them, no expectations, no judgments, no need to adjust who they are. And over time, that space starts to represent something deeper than just comfort. It becomes emotional security, and that's where the pattern begins to take shape. Because when your nervous system learns that this is where you feel most regulated, you naturally start choosing it more often, not consciously, but instinctively. And slowly, the outside world starts to feel more draining in comparison. Social interactions take more energy. Uncertainty feels heavier. Even small things like going somewhere unfamiliar can feel like unnecessary effort. Not because you can't handle it, but because your system has learned that it doesn't have to. And here's where it gets interesting. People often assume that loving to stay at home is about comfort, but a lot of the time, it's actually about control. At home, you control your environment. You control the pace. You control what happens and what doesn't. There are fewer variables, fewer surprises, fewer emotional risks. And that matters more than most people realize. Because when you've experienced environments that felt unpredictable, overwhelming, or emotionally demanding, you don't just forget that. You adapt to it. You start to value spaces where nothing catches you off guard, where you don't have to stay alert, where you can fully relax without scanning for what might go wrong. So staying home isn't just about preference. It can be about preserving that sense of internal calm. And over time, that calm becomes something you protect. You might begin to notice that you're selective with where you go, selective with who you see, selective with how much energy you give, not in an obvious way, but quietly, because you've learned what it feels like to be drained and what it feels like to be at ease, and the difference matters. There's also another layer to this. When you spend a lot of time in your own space, you get used to processing things internally. You think things through on your own. You sit with your thoughts longer. You become familiar with your own patterns, your own rhythms. And that creates a kind of independence, but it's a specific kind. It's not loud, it's not outwardly expressive. It's quiet, contained, self-sufficient. You don't rely on constant external input. You don't need stimulation to feel okay. And from the outside, that can look like you're just someone who likes being alone. But internally, it's often more structured than that. It's a system that keeps things stable. And stability becomes part of your identity. I'm just someone who likes staying in. I prefer my own space. I don't need much. And those statements feel true, because they are. But they're also shaped by what your mind has learned to associate with comfort and what it has learned to avoid. That doesn't make it a bad thing. It's not a flaw. It's not something that needs to be fixed. It's a pattern, one that prioritizes peace, predictability, emotional consistency. And in a world that often feels overstimulating, that kind of pattern can actually be very grounding. But it also explains why certain things feel the way they do, why spontaneous plans feel heavier than they should, why too much social interaction becomes draining faster than expected, why being home doesn't just feel comfortable, it feels right. Because for you, it's not just a place, it's a state where your mind doesn't have to work as hard, where your guard can come down, where things feel manageable. And once something becomes that reliable, you naturally return to it, again and again. So when someone says they love staying at home, it's easy to take that at face value. But underneath that simple statement, there's often a deeper psychological structure, one built around safety, control, energy preservation, and emotional regulation. And once you start to see it that way, it stops looking like a small preference and starts looking like a pattern that was learned, reinforced, and quietly integrated into who someone is. Because behaviors like this, they're rarely random. They come from somewhere. And awareness of that has a way of changing how you understand yourself, and other people too. Because what looks like just staying home might actually be something much deeper, something intentional, even if it wasn't conscious, something protective. And once you see that, you don't really unsee it. If this explains something you've noticed in yourself, there's always more beneath the surface.